Hey everyone, welcome to the Dyl Pickle Movie Network. I am Dylan Randazzo, and welcome to my final review in a long series of reviews that I call 2023 Catch Up, where I'm catching up on all the big films of 2023 that have been released thus far. I started Monday with some January horror, I went on a Tuesday with Cocaine Bear, Wednesday Creed 3, Thursday Scream 6, and here we are on Friday, and I am reviewing Shazam, Fury of the Gods, which has been, if you've been out there looking, critically panned. A lot of people don't like this movie. Audiences have been kinder to it, but generally the perception is that this film is a weak point of the DC universe as we know it. And I think that's another big thing to keep in mind is that this whole DC thing is shifting. James Gunn is taking over. They're going to scrap a lot of the universe as we know it, recast a lot of actors, and kind of start from the ground up again, while also carrying over a few properties like Peacemaker is going to follow over. The Matt Reeves Batman film is going to be like an adjacent film to this, as is Joker. But these DC characters, the Henry Cavill Batman, Wonder Woman Gal Gadot, we don't really know necessarily if this is the definitive end, but it seems like this is like the end of that chapter. And I could admittedly do a little bit more research on that, but this isn't a review about the DC universe more so than it is about Shazam, Fury of the Gods. But it is some good context to keep in mind because it seems sometimes that when a franchise is doomed, let's say, um, I just don't necessarily know if the most effort was put into something when you know it's going downhill already. It's very interesting to look at this film because I think a lot of the issues with this film don't even come from the story being told necessarily, but more so the horrible attempts at connecting it to a bigger world, which we'll talk about in a sec. And then the visuals and the aesthetics. I just feel like with DC and the MCU and Marvel, just the visuals have been a step lower than some of the rest. And I do believe it's because they're just trying to cram so many movies into such a tight schedule, especially coming off the pandemic where you basically had a whole year of waiting to release a movie. Sure, Wonder Woman 84 was released during that period, but a lot of the movies that were supposed to be released in the next few months got pushed. And I just feel like it's all showing in this era of superhero filmmaking because there's a lot of visual effects. It almost feels like dumpage, almost like they're just dumping everything they can into these visual effects without really finessing them. And I have some colleagues that I know that work in these visual effects department, and a lot of the work they do is very good. It's like creature design. I think the issues with these films are not just the designs themselves, because the designs themselves are good. And Shazam Fury of the Gods has some really cool monsters and creatures. It's how they kind of interact with the non-effects driven work, the actual cinematography, and just the way it's all edited around together and the color correction. I think there's a lot more issues than just the creatures or the designs themselves, because those are good. But an example, this film, there's a lot of creatures that I feel like aren't shown in the best light because all the editing around them is so choppy and quick that you can't even really get a good look at the creatures. And the lighting in these scenes are poor that you can't really get a good look at these creatures. So I think there's some good stuff going on in the visual effects department. It's just how it all kind of comes together in the final grand whole. And I don't know who there is to blame for that. Is it the editing? Is it the cinematography? Is it the post-production team? Is it the visual effects department? Is it just the direction itself? Is it the production itself? I don't know. I think it's a mix of all of it. And I'm not trying to put the blame on one person, but it seems like in general, in the superhero genre, and I'm talking about the franchise superhero genre, because you look at something like Matt Reeves as the Batman, and those visual effects look freaking awesome. And I think it's because it was its own project. It had its own team working on it, not trying to connect it to any deeper franchise. It didn't have to fit aesthetically to any other franchise. And I think with the problem with Shazam is that it's trying too hard to fit into the mold of other franchise films in this franchise when we know this franchise may not include Shazam in a few months. You know, this may be the end of Shazam. I haven't really gotten into what the story is, and the story is very simple. It's these presumably evil gods come to take back the staff that Shazam snapped between his knees in the last film, and Shazam and his team have to fight them off. But they have the power to basically strip all of these superheroes of their power, because as we know with the last film, Billy and all his friends all have powers now. So they all have the ability to turn into Shazams, to turn into the older versions of themselves. So you start to see how these villains are able to slowly, one by one, take away their powers, to where Billy has to then fight against them to try to stop the villains, but also regain the powers for his friends and stuff like that. It's a very base level plot, which is why I don't really want to spend too much time talking about the story, because the story itself is fine. It's a good template. I actually think there's a lot of good lessons to be made from this film, because each person kind of loses their powers as it goes. There's a great sentiment, and it's kind of cheesily written. It's the best part about you, the most super part about you, or the most powerful part. I don't know exactly the right quote, but the most powerful part about you is you. And the whole idea that you don't need to have superpowers to be powerful. And I love that sentiment. I think that's a great sentiment, especially for a genre that's mostly geared toward younger people, to show them that you don't need superpowers to be a superhero. And I love that message that this film has. And I was really on its wavelength because of that message for a long time. And then the ending happened. All the visual effects aside, I was on board with the film, and then the ending happened. And this ties into the use of previous characters as well. So I just can't talk about it without spoiling it. I know I didn't want to spoil Scream 6 yesterday, so I said I would do a whole separate draft day to talk about spoilers. Here, it seems almost inevitable that spoilers are going to come up. So I will talk about spoilers in just a sec. But before I talk about spoilers, I just want to say Rachel Zegler, innocent. I really think Rachel Zegler is one of the most talented performers, and I wanted to give her spotlight. It seems like people like Lucy Liu, Helen Mirren, they're great gets for this movie, but they seem to be reining in, and where Rachel Zegler is really putting in the work. And Jack Dylan Grazer is also a highlight. He's great in everything I've seen him in. The two of them have so many great scenes together, even earlier on in the film, that have no superpowers attached to them whatsoever. It is just the two of them interacting as awkward high school kids, and it is the most charming stuff I've seen from this entire franchise. Just these two actors playing off one another, being kind of giddy and smiley and giggly, and he's blushing and she's cheesing, and it's the cutest stuff in this whole movie. And I wish there was more of that, because I think the first Shazam, I had some issues with it because I think it was almost too tonally clashing, because there was some really dark stuff and then there's some really silly kind of fun family friendly stuff. And I think this one, it's going back more into the family friendly realm. The dark stuff isn't overbearingly dark this time, to where I actually kind of appreciated the tone here. I do think Zachary Levi is good, but I do think he's playing it almost a little too childish, to where Billy is still getting older and it feels like Shazam is still this like little kid trapped in a older body. Zachary Levi is playing it more as a 9-year-old in an adult body rather than a 16, 17-year-old in an adult body. So I think Zachary Levi, he's always charming in this role, but I think this is a step down because he's trying to play it almost a little dumber than he did before, when in reality, Billy would be getting smarter. And that's one of the main central conceits of this film, that it is this teen in an adult's body. And if you can't sell that, it kind of ruins a lot of the movie. But I do think a lot of the supporting characters, like I said, Rachel Zegler, innocent, is really able to elevate this film, some of the performances in this film. And I really do hope Rachel Zegler gets more work outside of franchise filmmaking to really show all her chops, because she is so talented. But even in these franchise films, she's showing that she is the strongest part of them. But back to the ending. Now getting into spoiler talk, getting into the ending. This ending, listen, I love the fact that all these franchises have so many characters and you can have all these actors show up and it's really fun. And sometimes it really works. Like Avengers Endgame, it is a nostalgia fest, but it's cool to see all the characters all together fighting alongside one another. There's something powerful about that, to show, hey, look how far we've built this product and this universe. At the end of this film, Billy dies. And Billy, his death, at first I was like, oh man, you killed Shazam. But then I'm like, wow, like this is a really powerful ending. The fact that Billy found out what his purpose was, and the fact that all of these kids don't have their powers anymore, but they all realized that they were powerful without their powers. And Billy died, showing just how bold he was. He had that final moment with his adoptive mother that he had this really emotional moment with, and then he died, and it was sad, but it was also this like kind of perfect coda to this really complex thematic work they've been doing in the last two films. And then the very last scene, Wonder Woman shows up with like the big loud score. I'm like, all right, we just ruined this really like touching moment with like this really blazing score. And then she walks in, and Undoes everything. Basically raises him out of the dead, which gave for a funny gag, I guess, of his hand coming out like Evil Dead style, but raises him out of the dead. So Billy's death is now retconned, which I guess makes sense because you need him in the franchise. If you wanted to build this franchise, how do you do that? Do it without Shazam? I get it. I get it. I get that part. But then he's like, who wants all their powers back? And all the kids are like, we do. And then all the kids get their powers back. And I get it, for a franchise, it's cool to see all these kids have their powers. But the whole beautiful sentiment of the movie was that you do not need powers to be superpowered. Superpowers do not necessarily require abilities. Superpowers can just be your kindness of your heart and your brain and your good-willed nature to help others. And that was what was so cool about this film. And then they totally ruined that in the ending by having Wonder Woman come in and basically give everyone their powers back. And it frustrated me so much because I had gone into this thinking, how is this getting negative reviews? I get it with the visual aesthetics. I get it's not the best put together film, but I was like, it has a good message. I'm surprised so many critics are panning it. And then this ending scene happens, and I'm like, I totally get it because it immediately made me hate parts of this movie and be like, why did I sit through all that growth to just have it retconned at the end? And cool, the wizard has a new outfit, whatever, but it's like, it just really seemed like a missed opportunity. Maybe even if they were going to do this Deus Ex Machina, they could have at least saved it for another film, maybe, and then made that a part where it's like these kids are like, we've done a lot of growing, but we really like our powers back. Like maybe that could work. But when you've gone through literally 2 hours of character development to then throw it all away, I mean, a lot of these characters focus on why they love what they do outside of the superhero ness. I mean, Jack Dylan Grazer's character, it's all about how he's able to find romance. Again, not linked to superheroism. One of the older girls in this troupe shows how she's liking branching out and becoming more of an adult and having friends and going out drinking with friends. Again, not superhero related. I think the whole movie was to show that Billy was too stuck on the whole, we have to be superheroes all the time, guys. We have to be a family. We have to be a team. But the whole movie is showing how they could all exist on their own and have their own separate interests and career paths and journeys. And for the whole film to just kind of take a 180 and say, ah, never mind, we're back to where we started. Because essentially that's where we are. We're back to where we started. The only addition is the parents now know about all their kids. Rachel Zegler is now Jack Dylan Grazer's girlfriend. And that's it. Everything else is the same because you have all the kids basically with their powers again. There's really nothing that's changed from the beginning. And it's so frustrating to see because, again, it plays into the idea that these are all connected franchise films and they want to keep the available options open for future films. And I get it, but at the same time, it totally goes against what you're saying in this story. If you really want to keep these characters around for future installments with powers and all, then don't make the movie about how they exist fine without their powers. Make it about something else. Tell a whole different story then. I'll admit, knowing now that the franchise is going in a totally revamped direction, it seems even more ludicrous that they decided to keep this version as the one they showed in theaters. Because if they had any doubt in their mind that Shazam would continue, if they were like, you know what, this may be our last Shazam film, then they should have ended it on that powerful note because now they may not get a third film to explore these characters. And now all the beautiful stuff that they did in this film is retconned. It just frustrated me so much to where literally I was ready to give this a slightly positive review. And then as soon as I left, I said, nope, that's not a good movie because it kind of abandons everything it sets out for. And like I said, there are so many good parts of this movie. I think the performances outside of Zachary Levi's are all super strong. And even Zachary Levi, when he's not necessarily nailing the whole older teen in an adult's body, at the end of the film, he has some good moments that I think do show a little bit more of that maturity that I would have liked to see the entire time. I think the villains, Helen Mirren and Lucy Liu, like I said, aren't always giving it their 110%, but by reining it in, there's still Helen Mirren and Lucy Liu. So there's still good presences to have in a movie. I just, between the effects and just the ending, trying to incorporate it into the franchising and bring in Wonder Woman. And again, I like seeing Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, but again, it just feels like uh, it feels like the purpose was just to totally undo everything that they had kind of built up. And it's just frustrating. I don't really want to talk about it anymore because I don't want to seem like I'm this negative Nancy. And I don't like posting negative reviews. If you've noticed on my channel, I've kind of steered away from that in the past few years, just like trying to only put out movies reviews for things I really want to talk about. But I did kind of set a schedule for myself and I did say I would review this. So I am reviewing this. And for a lot of the runtime, I thought it was going to be a positive review. And it really just is a shame. And I haven't talked about the product placement, and everyone's probably going to be asking me, talk about Skittles, talk about Skittles. The thing is, the product placement here was so in your face that it's almost kind of admirable to where I'm like, you know what? You weren't subtle about it, and you decided to take something that could have been a very throwaway product placement moment and just kind of went overboard with it to where I almost kind of felt amused by it. I was almost so entertained by how ridiculous the product placement was. They were shameless about it. I can't blame them for that. They probably got a lot of money from them to do it. So hey, you know, use it, use the rainbow. That's my review for Shazam Fury of the Gods. It's gotten a lot of fury out of me just sitting here watching it. Also, really funny that Shazam mentions Fast and Furious to Helen Mirren when Helen Mirren was in the Fast and Furious movies. I just think that's also very funny. I love when a movie exists in a universe where the actress from that movie that exists in the universe is also a character in the universe that the movie is existing in. Anyway, I'm rambling on too much. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, comment on this video. Let me know what you thought of this film down below. Were you a little bit more positive on it? Were you much more negative on it? Let me know, because I feel like I'm kind of in the middle now, where I liked it and then the ending ruined it, whereas a lot of people are like all the way at the bottom with this. Interested to see where this franchise goes from here. And of course, I want to thank all my lovely friends and colleagues and fans here who have donated for the 24-hour subathon and have gotten their names shown here. They are a great help in helping building this channel and building my overall mental happiness and sanity as well, by ensuring me that I'm doing a good job, or at least a job that is worthy enough for them to feel like they are obliged to reach out and help out, and it does not go unnoticed. So thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time.